because we don't know what the lays look like. But welcome everybody to what do we call our show, Ben?
Money Mondays.
Money Mondays. It is Monday, a little better than other Mondays, right? I don't know. It doesn't. Maybe it's been our Mondays are always really packed, but at least this week feels like good,
really?
Productive packed.
Oh well, yeah, it's definitely
Maybe
been. Yeah, it's definitely got some good meetings, right? It
yeah, good meetings, kind of trying to set initiatives and goals. But
I was about to say I only had like 20 minutes.
No, we didn't have
throughout
much
the
breaks,
whole entire day since 8 o'clock this morning.
A little better than the others where I feel like we're bombed and I come in here exhausted. Whereas this time I feel like we'll work through some things and kind
of. The Starbucks might have a little bit of extra sugar.
Got
in
my
it today,
Starbucks. For those of you that know me, I got my Sweet and Low as well.
Yes.
But I was told
he literally
I needed
keeps packs of them here. He's always prepared.
Absolutely. But I was told I got to crack a joke, Ben. So I want to say your hair is looking very nice today.
Yeah, nice and long. I'm growing it out, man, as people can see.
Actually, I did get a haircut yesterday. Finally trimmed this down a little bit. I just got back from vacation. I should have cut my hair before.
Yeah, you look like you got a little bit of sun. A little bit of sun.
A little bit more tan.
Went down to Padre, where the good
For anyone
beaches
in
are.
Texas, South Padre is 2 hours past Corpus Christi, but much nicer ocean.
Yeah.
Corpus Christi is really not that much better in my mind usually than Galveston, but South Padre is pretty much where you start to get some of those Mexico-style beaches, right? Where
it's at the white sands, blue ocean. We don't get any of that in Galveston.
No.
It's all murky.
We got it I think one day.
It was an anomaly.
Where everyone was surprised that it was crystal clear.
It was an anomaly.
Yeah.
The scientists came out because they were confused as to why it was crystal clear.
Was confused. But Monday Mondays, right? We basically do it every Monday, 3:30 Central.
Yep.
We like to talk about a bunch of different topics, usually real estate specific. Each time we have a different topic. This time we're going to talk about actually a deal that did 2 years ago. So real case study on an actual deal, start to finish. We try to keep this 30 minutes all in, so we're going to be pretty quick. But the idea really is this is for you guys. Ask questions. We will answer your questions live, Q&A here on air. I'll read them, so definitely if you have questions, go ahead and ask them. But let's get started, right? So this week, he's talking about a deal called Huntington Park in Beaumont, Texas, which the opposite side of South Padre. So South Padre is southwest, whereas this one's east. And really is going to go through this case story of kind of what happened in the deal, start to finish, right?
Yeah, so just as people can see up on the screen right now, that was actual picture. It looks like it's a little bit Photoshopped, but it's actually, that was what it looked like after our second rehab.
After it got cleaned up.
Yeah, after the second rehab number 2 is what we like to call it, right? So this was, obviously disclaimer, folks, this was a deal that, went very, very well. But past performance is not indicative of future performance, right? And any deal that you see, you obviously need to talk to your CPA, lawyer, financial advisor, and make sure that it's in line with your risk profile. So anyway, having said that, let's get into the details. Beaumont, man. So why do we love Beaumont?
We like Beaumont because it's convenient to get to. So I do tell people, invest in a market that you can get to fairly easily, right? I mean, I love Reno, and actually I do want to do a deal in Reno, but Reno is not a day trip for me.
No, it's not.
Maybe I will buy in Reno, and I'm going to take the bet back. But you want to be somewhere that you can, especially if you're getting started, you don't have a team, you don't have systems, right? We love Atlanta because we day trip to Atlanta, literally. 6 a.m. flight out, 7 p.m. fly back, boom, wake up in my bed, sleep in my same bed, right?
Yep.
That's convenient. Beaumont, same thing. We do day trips out there.
Yep.
It's about an hour and a half east of Houston, easy to get to, but ultimately, people don't realize that it's a very big city. The Beaumont MSA has, 400,000 people
450,000,
right?
Yep.
And so, it's not a tiny market, and it's, while it does have a lot of oil, it's got a lot of chemical as well. So it actually is fairly robust, not a one-shop pony.
Well, it's got logistics too. It's got the port.
Yeah, so it's one of the largest ports in the country in terms of just imported tonnage. It's got the military presence. And so it's a good market, but ultimately, we look for good things in a market, right? Job growth, population growth, which Beaumont had, but also we're looking at price points. Where can we buy in places that I can buy cheap enough that we can cash flow really well? So that's why we like Beaumont, right? And we've had 3 deals to date in Beaumont.
Yep, we still got one. We still own 265 units there. So, but we've exited successfully 2.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks here in Houston really like that market because of the same reason that we talked about, right? It's close. You get a good price per pound, and ultimately it's a cash flow market, right? You're not going to get the uber appreciation, folks, that you're going to get in, say, a DFW or maybe in Austin or something like that, right? We're buying in that market for specific reasons, right? And that is cash flow. And we'll kind of get around to that. But some of the reasons why we like it, right? It's stable, not attractive, but hey, that equals
it's not
cash
a
flow.
sexy market, but it's a cash flowing market.
Absolutely. So Huntington Park, like we said, 92 units, garden style, 1974 build, flat roofs with mansards. So what? Just and I always say that, but people are like, "What the heck is a mansard?"
Yeah,
right? So if you guys can see on the picture here, if we want to go back to the picture, that little facade on the side of it, right? That kind of comes down. That used to be wood. We actually ended up shingling it over because the wood's just a fire hazard. But that's what a mansard is. So it's that kind of style back from the 60s and 70s, kind of that old English style. That's what a mansard is, right? So we purchased this in spring 2016. And like we said, there's two other deals that we ended up buying. One was right across the street, we still own, and then the other one was right up the road. So all of our stuff was on the west end, which is the best end in most cities for some weird reason. And Beaumont is no different, right? So the story, right?
All right, wait. Now let's see if Ben can tell this story I'm going to give you 90 seconds, all right? Because this is about a 15-minute story usually.
All right, I'm gonna give you the truncated version, right? So the story is this was a local broker that did a lot of residential, right? He knew the owners. These were out-of-state owners that had owned Huntington Park since they developed it back in the 70s. Right, so the local broker was they also did property management. They also property managed this deal, right? So it's an out-of-state owner, local broker, long-term owner, right? Because they owned it since the 70s, right? So their basis was pretty much nothing at this point because they've refied it 20 different times. And then the financials were poorly positioned. If you ever buy a deal through, say, an ARA or Marcus & Millichap, they're recasting the financials to put those financials in the best possible light, right? This gentleman just gave me a PDF. They had not been recasted, they had not done anything, so they looked really, really bad in comparison to what they wanted, right? When I looked at it, it was $100,000 in NOI, and they wanted $3 million, right? So the cap rate on that is pretty bad, especially for a Beaumont deal, right? But when I started doing my adjustments and kind of rethinking things and, okay, hey, their insurance looks a little high, let's go ahead and get our insurance quote from Dan Kaderka, and, ultimately he was able to save us 40 grand on this deal. So once all those adjustments were made, now they wanted $3 million, and there's $300,000 in NOI. Yeah. So as we've talked about cap rates.
$100,000 over $3 million is a 3.33% cap rate.
So you do $300,000 over $3 million.
About 10%.
Is a 10 cap deal. So even back in 2016, this was pretty good, right? So.
Before you keep going, so for those of you tuning in, Money Mondays, we do this every Monday, 3:30 Central on the dot. Typically run 20 to 30 minutes and kind of go through a bunch of different topics, real estate, usually real estate focused. Next week, we're going to talk about real estate versus stocks and kind of the benefits of pros and cons of each there. Right, this week, we're talking about a real case study. I know a lot of people want to understand how to do a deal, the life cycle of a deal, start to finish. So we figured we'd kind of go through that. And on a real deal that we did, last year actually is kind of when it sold. And so, for those of you tuning in, right, we like to do Q&A at the end. So definitely if you have questions, go ahead and drop them. We will answer them live here on the show. And continue on, Ben.
Man, I was humming.
I'll have to interrupt you right at the minute and a half. All right, now let's see if you can pick up.
So the acquisition process. So we ultimately, once we did our adjustments, we found out that's a great deal, right? So what were we going to do? We made an offer. We didn't even negotiate. We said, okay, you want your $3 million? We'll take it at $3 million. That's a great deal. So we negotiated the
life tip. I tell Ben, always negotiate.
Well, we ended up doing it a little bit, right? We ended up getting 90-day close, 45-day inspection period, which for people that are familiar with the process, you don't get that length of time on these negotiations. So that was we got good price and good terms. We ultimately got it under contract, did our due diligence, right? What have we said about due diligence in the past, right? It's you're doing financial audits with your property management company, you're doing the unit walks, and then you're also inspecting the property with your general contractor, right? Simultaneously to that, right, you're working with your legal team, right? You're drafting the PPM, the subscription agreement, everything that goes along with having to raise money. And parallel to all of this, right, you're also working with your lender to get the best terms that you can, the best loan amount, interest rate, what have you, right? And then after that, you're going to get into your equity raise, right? Because you want to make sure that all that stuff's buttoned up before you go out and start raising money from people, right? So we were a go. The property looked great. It was funny. A third party, I won't name any names, but they're like, this is the best Class C property that we had ever inspected. The property manager who's still there, her name's Jana, she's a great gal. She had records that had dated back 20 years. Just meticulous in her record keeping, right? And so even though it was a little bit antiquated, she had done a great job. So from the raise, right, we're ultimately going to try to close it, right? Because that's what you're looking for. So that's kind of the acquisition process at a very, very high level. There's 1,000 different ways to figure this out, but go to investoracademy.net and
Yeah.
We talk about that a little bit more.
Deep dives on kind of investoracademy.net. So we kind of put together a bunch of deep dive courses on all these specifics and kind of how those work. But let's keep going down the story.
Right.
So deals bought. What is forcing appreciation?
So, as we've talked about in the past, folks, right? There's market appreciation, which is just, hey, cap rates are going down, which means things are going up in value. Or you can
down. Okay, sorry, wrong song.
Where's the? You should have gotten the laughter. No, okay, all right. That wasn't that funny. You have to. We're trying to see if you're paying attention, Shanna. So you're forcing appreciation, right? You're putting money into the property to make it perform better or drive value, right? So this was our actual rehab plan from the property, and I won't go down line by line, but as you can see, the majority of that was roof replacements. A lot of stuff was pretty old, hadn't been replaced in 10, 15 years. And in Beaumont, along the coast, you need to have good roofs, right? So what I always tell people is whenever you're working with your lender about your rehab budget, try to be vague, right? Instead of saying, I want to do 127 interiors, and each interior is going to have granite backsplash, it's going to have brown flooring, and being very, very specific, just say, I want unit upgrade, or I'm going to do interior upgrades, right? Keep it as vague as possible because that allows you to adjust along the way whenever you kind of get into the actual work. Build in a buffer, right? Have some contingency in there when you can, right? That's important when you're doing a value add because things pop up. We're big proponents of outside in, right? So we're usually going to do new signage, new paint, just to show the people that are driving by the property that things are changing, right? New management, new ownership, we're putting money into the property. And then from there, right, you can also be doing the inside stuff, the interior upgrades. But ultimately, tenants don't care about roofs.
No.
So, ultimately look at it through the lens of what's going to be the best return on our investment. And roofs, it pained me to pay $127,000, but they had to get done. Right, but I wasn't able to increase the value anyway.
And we were looking last week at a deal that probably had about $800,000 of roof work that needs to happen.
Yeah.
That sucks, but you got to do what you got to do. You still got to build a good quality environment, and a non-leaking unit is
that's So if you want to talk about tenant retention, right? That's important, right? But you're never going to be able to. Oh, that roof looks new. Let me go ahead and see if I can rent that out. And I'll pay an extra $50 for that. So you have to kind of weigh all those things when you're doing your rehab. So that is forcing appreciation. I am putting money into the property to improve it and therefore improve the bottom line, right? So we got through the whole entire rehab. That was rehab number one. And then as some folks are familiar with, a little thing called Hurricane Harvey happened. That happened in August 2017. And Shannon, if you could bring up the pictures here. These are actual photos from the property. We had about a foot and a half of water, depending on where we were on the property, throughout pretty much the whole entire property. Everybody's car that was parked there that night ended up flooding, and 32 of the units out of the 92 ended up, flooding pretty bad. And we had to end up terminating those people's leases, and we ended up having to gut those units. So luckily, being that me and Ferris are from Houston, we understand how floods are and how they can really affect this part of the country.
We had to be an expert in flood.
Unfortunately, we are though, right? And so we had flood insurance through FEMA on this deal. Thankfully, right? Because obviously, as you can tell, here's another photo here, a ton of water just throughout the property. So what do you need to do, right? First and foremost, you need to make sure your tenants are, I always call this rehab number 2. You have to make sure that your tenants are safe, right? We had some elderly folks. We had to make sure that they could be relocated. Obviously nobody had their cars, and it ended up getting very, very hot right after Hurricane Harvey, so it was a pretty tough time. So you need to assist your tenants with relief and give them options, right? And then you got to go through the FEMA grind, right? You got to file your claim ASAP. Realize that I was one of 1 million or 2 million people trying to file a claim with FEMA at the same time, right? So you have to get in there. You have to get in there soon. You have to get in there early, right? Ask for one adjuster, right? They're usually the way that these FEMA policies are written. They're written by building. So we had, 10 buildings there. I didn't want 10 different adjusters. They ultimately wanted to send 10 guys out there, but I didn't want to do that. So I ultimately asked them to give me as little as they could, and we got 3, right? So push for a quick inspections, right? You want to go and give me the money, come on, because I got work to do, and leverage your insurance broker. Like I said, I use Dan Kadurka, Strategic Insurance. He's a great guy. He really bailed us out on this one. Can't say enough about that. Pick your GC wisely, right? The GCs, they had a heck of a year that year. They could hit a golf ball and they'd have 20 different jobs. So you have to pick yours wisely, or they're going to go to the next bigger job. right? And luckily, because we had been in the business,
even if you do pick them on, they will still go to the next bigger job.
It's
really
possible,
keep them on
right?
a leash
So you have to keep
how
on
you work with them.
really close eye on them, or they will obviously jump jobs or just delay things in general. We had picked the guy that we had used prior to this, and so he already knew the property. He had vendors in the location, and he was able to kind of get out there. So that happened, I think, Sunday night. By Thursday, we were remediating. So we had crews out there, and he was pulling sheetrock and getting that, because there's a lot of fly-by-night GCs out there, right? And I know I'm going pretty quick. Don't want to, if anybody's got any questions, I can obviously
so for
pause.
those of you tuning in, right, Money Mondays, we do this every Monday, 3:30 Central. Right, our goal is really going through a bunch of different topics, usually real estate focused, and at the end, kind of doing an open Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We're happy to talk about anything, regardless if it's something we presented or not. Right, if you have other questions on your mind, regardless if it's real estate or not, we're happy to talk through just about anything.
Yeah, and I always describe this deal as one of the deals that could have gone very, very badly. One of the deals that, if it hadn't have gone the way that it did, I probably wouldn't be on the screen right now. Because, I probably would have had to come out of pocket. There was people that we knew in this part of the state that didn't have flood insurance, and they had to come out of pocket hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? It can bankrupt somebody. So that's the importance of insurance, right? But the lease up, right? So we got through, all the work. So ultimately, in summary, 32 leases had to be terminated. We did not get forbearance from our lender. Forbearance is just pretty much a delay in your payment. This happened at the end of August. September's payment rolls around about a week later. I asked them, hey, can you at least give us a month? And they said no. Luckily, this deal had been doing very, very well. We had a lot of cash reserves, so it didn't really hurt us too much. But you can imagine, folks, we went from 99% occupied down to the 60s overnight. So if you don't have those reserves set aside, who's going to come up with that money to pay that note? Because the lender wasn't giving us a delay on it, right? That would have been you, the syndicator, or you would have had to go back to your investors, which is even worse. So we had a $2.1 million insurance claim that we ended up getting from FEMA on an $8,500 policy. So it would cost us $8,500 a year, and they paid out 2.1. So 32 units, completely updated, new office, new pool area, all new ACs, all new laundries, pretty much the whole shebang. 20 of the tenants came back. Can you believe that? So of the 32 units, they had lost their cars, they had lost all their belongings, but they still loved the property so much that 20 of them came back. So the rehab was done, and we were fully leased back up by March. This happened at the end of August. So, that kind of gives everybody a little bit of a timeline.
But let's keep going. Let's talk about the fun stuff now.
This is the fun stuff. So let's talk about the numbers, right? So broker opinion of value. So we knew of the price point that we bought it at, right? We had $3 million. We had already put $500K into it. Now we're putting another 2.1. So we're 2.6 into a $3 million deal. We're sitting on a ton of equity. So we went back to the brokers that were in Houston and said, hey, can you size this deal up? Can you give us a proposal on how much you'd sell it for, right? So they review the financials, they review all the renovations that you do, and then they pretty much come up with, a price range, right? And then down below at the bottom there, you kind of see these were the actual numbers that we were provided by one of the brokers. As people remember, I bought it at less than $3 million actually, and we'll get through the numbers here in a minute. So the disposition, don't start buying stuff just yet. It's a little bit of a process. The brokers know you're kicking it around, so now they know who's hot for deals in the area and can close, and then they start shopping it to these buyers, right? And it's usually going to be a 30-day, maybe 60-day process. Even if it's on market or off market, doesn't really matter. It's still about the same amount of time. Offers are submitted, winner is chosen, and then you ultimately, you go with the person that you chose. It was a gentleman that was out of Houston. He liked the deal, and I'll show you why. So final returns. So the left-hand column here, you can kind of see what was projected in 2016. This is what we talked to our investors about, right? Purchase price ended up being 10.1 cap on actuals. We bought it at 297. Note was 2816. Equity rate was 800K. Our year one cash on cash returns that we projected were 17.7. Now for anybody that's underwriting deals these days, you don't see these types of returns anymore, right? It's going to be closer to the 8 to 10% range. Our year two cash on cash returns are still 13.8. So obviously we burned off that year of interest only payments to our lender, and that's ultimately why it fell back a little bit. Average annualized returns were supposed to be 25.5 in year two, and our IRR in year two was 24.6, which is still pretty healthy. Year two total return, 51%, right? Reversion cap rate, 8.5. So the actuals, what we ended up selling in fall of 2008 or 18, right?
Yeah.
So it feels like it was last year, but that was actually a couple.
Right. Yeah.
You know, just 2020 has just gotten away.
It's been a long.
It's been a freaking long. It's been a long year, right? You know. So anyway, the sales price was $7 million flat, right? Which was a 7.1 cap on actuals. So for anybody that's looking at deals right now, would you buy a 7 cap on actuals? Most people would look pretty strongly at that deal.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
You know, so the gentleman, he thought he got a great deal, and I still to this day think that he did. And obviously we got a good deal on the sell, right? So the loan payoff, which included a prepayment penalty, and so won't get into the particulars of that, but there's a little bit of a penalty for selling it early. We had to pay off 2,988. Equity, we had to pay off for equity of 801. So the watered down cash returns that we had for year one were 17.2. I could have paid 30% if I wanted to, but we saved that delta and set it to the side, and I'm glad that we did because we needed it whenever the flood happened. Year two cash on cash returns was actually 76.24. That includes, you know, additional insurance proceeds plus all the cash flow that we had. So it was pretty healthy year two. Average annualized return was 182.5, right? And the IRR, a lot of people always question this number, but I'll show them the math, 140.9. So you're not going to get much better than that.
Can you show me the math?
Not right now, Ben? But I can on a spreadsheet because that's what helps me along with these math problems, right? So total return, you know, which is the topic of today, was 365%, right? Net proceeds on sale was 3,711. So what does 365% total return mean? It means if you invested 100K into this deal, I was going to give you your 100K back, and I was going to give you $365,000, right? That includes cash flow plus the net proceeds from the sale. So pretty good. This is one of the deals my parents did invest in, so they were pretty happy about this one. I was invited back to Thanksgiving dinner after this deal. You know, but yeah, once again, couldn't have asked for a better home run first deal. You know, and it makes for a great case study because it's one of those deals that could have gone the other way, right? So I blew through that. That must have been the fastest time that I've ever told that case study.
This time I didn't fall asleep. Usually I take a quick power nap during that, you know, kind of Ben talks through some of that stuff. But no, so for those of you tuning in, Money Mondays, we do it every Monday, 3:30 Central. We'd like to go over all sorts of different topics, usually real estate specific, but we're in the Q&A portion.
Yeah.
Q&A.
Yeah, and this doesn't have to be about the case study.
Feel free to ask them. So we're happy to kind of talk through anything you guys want, regardless if it's you know, the specifics of something we presented or something else. And so, you know, let's kind of go through the questions now. So Ronnie says, "What's up, guys?" Hey, Ronnie, how's it going?
What's up, buddy?
Let's see. He says, "How many cups of coffee did y'all have today?" This is my second cup.
Yeah, it's my second as well.
So
we're just naturally energetic people, man. No, we just love talking about multifamily. It makes it easy.
Yeah. Let's see. Ronnie also says home run deal. And he says, "That's the longest I've seen Ben talk." Clearly, you do not know Ben that well if that's the longest you've seen him talk, because I, you know, unfortunately, I have to be the bad guy and just kind of say, "Hey, Ben, look over there. All right, let's just talk about something else," and kind of distract him. But no, good job rolling with that, Ben.
I appreciate it.
Also, for those of you watching, we did put together basically a multifamily cheat sheet. So
yeah,
if you want that, www.disruptequity.com/MF cheat sheet. Right, we're kind of going through a lot of just tips and tricks and things about multifamily investing, things to keep in mind. So definitely check that out, disruptequity.com/MF cheat sheet. But if anyone has any more questions, we will go through them here live. So
and it doesn't have to be about the case study. It doesn't have to be necessarily about multifamily, right? You know, just, you know.
It could be about why we're both wearing white, because we're both paranoid that Ronnie's going to call us out on plaid shirts. And so now we're both very conscious of our Mondays.
Striped, by the way, Ronnie. It's not plaid.
I wanted it to match with my Starbucks coffee.
There you go. There you go.
All right, let's see. So, So, how did you pick Beaumont as a market? Question came in. So,
well, I think, you know, we talked about that a little bit earlier. You know, some of the reasons that we picked the markets that we are, it's logistics, right? You know, can we get there in a day trip, right? We either by a flight. We always talk about Atlanta. We love Atlanta because you can literally take a 6 a.m. flight, be there by 9, be at all of our properties all day long, take the 8 p.m. flight back. Right? So I'm back sleeping in my same bed the same day, and I'm able to hit all of our properties. Beaumont's the same thing. It's an hour and a half east of Houston on I-10. And so if there's a problem, I can get out there the next day. I can spend the whole day there, and I can come back. right? So that's one of the reasons why. The other reason was we were kind of getting priced out already in Houston. So we were looking for better returns and also to be within that logistics box too. So Beaumont was one of those markets that we had identified as, okay, hey, it's within our bubble, right? And it was going to have a higher return for us and our investors. So we started kind of focusing on that. And we knew some people in the market too that had said some really good things about it. You know?
See, so anyone has any more questions, we will take them here live. So Mondays, do this every Monday, 3:30 Central. Feel free to ask questions. We will answer them here live.
Yeah, and we want people to, chime in. If there's a certain topic that you want to hear, right? If there's something that you want to talk about, right? We're just coming up with some of these ideas on a fly, right? What we think that we can add value by talking to people about. But, obviously hit us up offline, and we're happy to see if we can incorporate it into one of the future Money Mondays as well.
All right, so we got another one. So appreciate the story. What process does Disrupt Management have in place to prepare your deals for hurricanes?
Yeah, that's actually a good question, right? Yeah. We hadn't started Disrupt Management yet on this deal, so we were using a third party on it. Yeah. But ultimately, there's a lot of things that you have to do, from informing your tenants to battening the hatches down, right? To making sure that you have the proper insurance in place.
Yeah, the big thing, making sure you have the right insurance, making sure your staff have the right supplies that they might need, right? Do you have a generator? Do you have other things that are problem that might need it in case something does go wrong at the property, right? And ultimately, just taking care of the tenants, right? And figuring out, unfortunately, I think with hurricanes, a lot of it is reactionary. There's not as much that you could do to be proactive, I'd say, right? But in general, just making sure your staff know how to do the various reports, who to call if this happens, what happens. And so our company as a whole on the management side is very connected, I like to say. And so, technology is in our DNA, and so I feel like we have a good pulse and kind of good visibility into what's going on. But it's keeping staff informed and making sure that they know what to do if things.
Hey, keeping tenants informed too, right? Sometimes you're gonna have older tenants, right, and they might be scared, or maybe they don't have family that's close, right? And so if the power's out, go check on them, right? You really have to be careful with the tenants too, because especially in a place like Beaumont, where literally 2 days after Harvey, it was 102 degrees, and they didn't have any water. The water had been the water power station had been knocked offline, and so they didn't have water for a whole week.
Yeah, Ben was going to go out there with a big palm leaf to wave the tenants down, but he couldn't get out there.
We were literally going to go out there with water and ice and stuff, but we were told not to do it by our property management company because, it could have gotten a little tense if they found out that we were the owner. So you have to trust in your property management company that they're going to be able to inform the tenants, make sure that the property is being taken care of, and make sure ultimately, folks, that you have the right level of insurance on these things. That's the most important thing.
So we got one more question. So for those of you tuning in, Mondays, every Monday, 3:30 Central. We're about to wrap it up, so if you have any questions, feel free to drop it. Typically, we're talking about different topics. This week, we're talking about a real case study that kind of had done a few years ago. And right now we're in the Q&A portion. So Q&A is, to me, the best value part. You can ask about anything you want. Doesn't have to be about the case study. So Jerry asks, do you prefer monthly distributions to investors or quarterly? I'll answer that for us. We both like monthly now, right? I think monthly makes a lot more sense for two reasons. People think that on the operation side, monthly is actually harder to do because now you're doing something once a month instead of once every 3 months. But really, as you grow, it gets easier because the problem is you buy all these properties, they're in different months, and they're on different schedules. So you end up getting in the situation of having to remember, okay, this month we should do property A, next month we should do C and D, the third month we should do property B, and it gets really hard to track. So, for us, just once a month, it's, the same system, the same process. We do it for every property that's paying distributions, and it gets easier for our side. For the investor side, it turns it more into mailbox money, right? As an investor, you want to, we buy cash flowing assets. That's our bread and butter. That's what we focus on. And being able to turn it into consistent mailbox money to investors rather than quarterly is a lot better. So I think our investors have found it a lot more attractive. Once we moved to monthly, people were definitely a lot more appreciative of that.
No, I agree.
All right.
Come on, no more questions about this?
Any more questions, people? If you have questions, feel free to ask, or otherwise we're going to wrap it up here in the next, I'd say 30 seconds.
All right, before we do that, right, we went through the cheat sheet.
DisruptEquity.com/MF cheat sheet.
All right. And then what's coming up next, man? What's up next week?
Talking about real estate and stocks, right? And kind of the pros and cons, and really add to that too, REITs, right? And kind of what their role is as well.
Yeah, because there seems to, there's a little bit of, where people think that REIT is real estate, and or that REIT is a stock, and it's just there's a lot of misconception about what it is, right? And so we'll talk about that. But yeah, come with your questions on that. That's an important topic that I think a lot of people getting into investing have a lot of questions on.
Absolutely.
No.
Yeah, otherwise, we will call it a wrap, guys.
All right.
Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right.